Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. Contrary to how my voice sounds, this is Jenny. 'Tis the season in Indiana where so many of us are dealing with allergies. I am one of them. I didn't want to put off an episode, but I'm up against the wall and I need to get this recorded. So, apologies to for my voice. Hopefully it's not too annoying for you all. So today we're on the estate planning of the rich and famous topic, and for today's episode, we're going to dive into what happened following the death of Florence Griffith Joyner, which she was kind of informally known as Flo-Jo. So Florence was a very well-known athlete in the 1980s, specifically the late 1980s, and her specialty was track and field. She was a kick-butt sprinter, breaking world records in the 100-meter sprint and 200-meter sprint. And at the 1984 Olympics, she brought home a silver medal in the 200-meter race. And then in the 1988 Olympics, she brought home 3 gold medals and 1 silver medal. So yeah, she was a pretty darn good athlete. Unfortunately, her life ended way too early. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit more about her as a person before we talk about what happened estate-wise following her passing. Hailing from Los Angeles, California, according to Florence's Wikipedia page, she was one of 11 children. Yeah, 11. And of course, while in school, she participated in track. And obviously, at least obvious to me, she did quite well. She set many school records for sprinting and long jump. After high school, she went on to California State University at Northridge, and she was, of course, on the track team there as well. She got her first taste in the Olympics, the whole Olympics land, in the 1980 Summer Olympics, where she had qualified for the 100-meter final. She did not win, but hey, participating was still quite the achievement, right? Unfortunately, Florence ended up having to drop out of college to help financially support her family, and she ended up taking a job as a bank teller. Her coach at California State University at Northridge, Bob Kersey, helped Florence get financial aid so she could be comfortable with getting back into the college swing, and obviously back on the track. And a little fun fact, Bob actually ended up becoming Florence's husband's brother-in-law, so kind of a interesting little tidbit. Though this time, she attended UCLA. And fast forward a little bit of time, Florence ended up graduating from UCLA with a degree in psychology in 1983. Shortly after graduation, according to her Wikipedia page, she really got to work. She competed at the World Championship in athletics, where she finished 4th in the 200-meter race. After that, she competed in the U.S. Olympic trials and went on to get the silver medal that I discussed in the 1984 Olympics. Thereafter, she really slowed down, but didn't stop. During this time, she ended up meeting and marrying Al Joyner, who was a track and field star as well. He was actually the triple jump champion, the gold medalist in the 1984 Olympics. After getting married, Florence got back into running, which ultimately, if I super fast forward more time, is when she competed in the Olympic trials and ended up at the 1988 Olympics, coming away with 4 medals, 3 golds and 1 silver. Her times recorded for the 100-meter dash and 200-meter dash are still the world records today, which is super cool, at least to me. Shortly after the 1988 Olympics showing, she retired from racing. Her and Al also welcomed their first and only child, Mary Ruth Joyner. At that time, she was interested in putting the tennis shoes down and looking at other opportunities that she was afforded through endorsement deals. And you want to hear something kind of cool for all my Indiana listeners? And side note, this podcast hails from Indiana, so I try to add some little Indiana tidbits when I find them. Anyway, so she actually designed the basketball uniforms for the Indiana Pacers team in 1989. On top of all this, she was also well known for her style. And part of that style was her nails, which I think is cool. According to her Wikipedia page, she had 6-inch nails painted red, white, and blue for the 1988 Olympic trials. And like her Wikipedia page says, quote, although many sprinters avoided accessories which may slow them down, Florence kept her hair long and wore jewelry while competing. I love that. So shifting from that to a little bit of sadness. So sadly, about 10 years later, on September 21st, 1998, Florence passed away while she was asleep at home. She was only 38 years old. It was released by the Orange County Coroner's Office that the cause of death was suffocation during a severe epileptic seizure. While her death was obviously unexpected, since she was only 38 years old, the cause of death was not exactly surprising because Florence had a condition that caused her to be subject to seizures. She had seizures in the past in 1990, 1993, and 1994. And after she passed away, it was discovered that Florence had done an estate plan, and likely and reportedly a last will and testament. But the issue was that it could not be found. No one had any idea where she stored it. According to the Forbes article found in the episode source links, in California, Al, Florence's husband, was supposed to file the will with the probate court within 30 days following Florence's death. Well, because it could not be located, nothing got filed, and drama ensued. According to a blog by Harrison Estate Law located in Florida, Al actually owned the house that Florence's mother was living in, and given Florence's passing, according to the blog, he wanted to restructure some of his financial affairs, which included getting Florence's mother out of the house. But Florence's mother argued that she was entitled to remain in the house for the remainder of her life. And that was just one example of what occurred between Al and his mother-in-law. Ultimately, since Al could not locate the will, and since it couldn't get filed with the probate court within 30 days, according to a blog from Coral Gables Trust Company, Florence's estate was distributed in accordance with California state law. And the probate court judge even went so far as appointing a total third party to administer Florence's estate, which I'm sure wasn't exactly what Al wanted to happen. I'm sure that wasn't cheap. So as we shift to what we can learn from Florence's estate, I think the obvious biggie to know and remember is that, of course, doing an estate plan is absolutely vital, but ensuring you are setting your executor or your trustee up for success is probably just as important. As an estate attorney, I'm not really sure how her will just flat could not be located. I have so many questions that the answers just aren't really out there. Did the attorney who did it not retain a copy? Here in Indiana, if the originals were not located, we have laws that protect, our citizens and say that essentially I should not say citizens, our residents of Indiana, that a copy is good enough. Though this all does remind me of a case that this exact same thing happened to a real client of mine. The client had a trust, and we could not locate the trust, even a copy of it. It was crazy. So actually, let me just take a minute and just share it with you all, since it's a real normal client. So one day a paralegal grabbed me because she took a weird call and wanted to make sure that we could even help. And I was like, okay, lay it on me. What's going on? So she proceeds to tell me that the person on the phone shared that their family member passed away, that family member who passed away had an estate plan, specifically a trust, that assets are held inside the name of the trust, but no one can find the trust document, that they've searched high and low and it's nowhere to be found. The trust was actually the caller's grandmother's trust, and the grandmother had passed away over 10 years ago. The grandmother had one child who was the caller's dad. The caller's dad passed away in 2021. So the caller was administering her dad's estate when she found this asset that was held in the name of her grandmother's trust. Talk about a crazy case, right? I mean, this stuff happens to normal people like you and I, not just, celebrities like Florence. Now, the financial institution that was holding the asset that was inside of Grandma's trust stated that they needed something showing that the granddaughter, the caller, is now the trustee of Grandma's trust. The issue with that sentence is that it totally minimizes the appropriate process. I think the caller thought I could just whip up a document that states, okay, now this person is the successor trustee and things are fine and dandy. If I did that, I'd probably be taking on liability. What if Grandma's trust put a bank as a corporate trustee? And the bank should have earned compensation serving in that role. Who knows? The document's missing. So I explained to the granddaughter I can't just willy-nilly appoint someone. I'm not that powerful. Attorneys have a lot of power in the legal system, but not that much power. So at this point, and I shared this with her, that I firmly believed that the only person, kind of air quotes person, that has the authority to appoint a successor trustee without a trust document would be to involve the court and have the judge appoint who is the successor trustee. Annoying? Yeah. Cumbersome? Yep. But was it the best solution? Yes. So that's what we did. The client listened to my recommendation, thankfully. She recognized that the involvement in the court was a good thing, that it formalized things and ultimately gave the family peace of mind, knowing finally after all these years that, since Grandma had passed, the T's were crossed and I's were dotted. So like Florence here, when it's time for you to hashtag do your estate plan, let's be sure it doesn't get lost. And there are a few things you can do after your estate plan is created to ensure your family is not in a similar boat. So let's talk about them. First, put your documents in a safe place, but also put them in a place that is sort of intuitive for your family. So what I mean by that is, I remember my own grandmother. She used to put really important stuff in her freezer. I would reach in to get an ice cream bar and some important piece of paper would fall out. So let's don't put our estate plan in the freezer or any other silly place like that. I often recommend a fireproof safe. The investment is something, and something like that will just be worth it. I also, just for a side note, do not recommend a safety deposit box at a bank. Banks get really weird when people die, and oftentimes they don't let the family access the box. Second, perhaps make digital versions of your documents and store them safely on your computer. My office maintains a hard copy of clients' documents in a digital version too, and sometimes when I explain this to clients, they'll say, hey, can you send me those digital versions as well? So just ask your attorney to see if that's an option and if they're willing and able to do it for you. Third, giving copies of your documents to the people in your documents, is kind of a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because they would, of course, have a copy of your documents if something happened to you and were to happen to your originals. But it's also sometimes a bad thing because if you were to update your documents at any point, you would have to remember who has copies of your documents and to get them replaced. The last thing you want is to give someone a copy, you update them, not give them an updated version, and then they inadvertently operate by the outdated versions. Yikes. So now, knowing all of this, be sure to make appropriate arrangements in your life when you hashtag do your estate plan. That way, you don't end up as a legal tea episode like Florence and my very own client that I just shared with you. Alrighty, I think we're ready to wrap this episode up, and I still have a voice. I'm kind of surprised. I can't really breathe out my nose, but that's a whole nother issue. So anyways, next week we're back to a cautionary tale episode where we talk about real life clients, real life cases that my office or I have actually worked on. And during that episode, we're going to be talking about a case where someone added their dad's name on a house because she didn't have like good enough credit. Well, Dad passed away, and because the deed was not set up correctly, they did it themselves. Her dad's interest in her house. You know what? Let's just wait for next time for you to find out what happened. So wait for next time, Legal Tea listeners, which will be next Tuesday. So tune in for that next week. Until then, take care and be well.